Welcome to Golf and the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, he's Connor Evers, and today we are going to share some valuable insight provided by those who have recently returned from H&B expeditions. But before we get there, Connor, we've got to talk about the Open at Royal Troon.
Absolutely. Our picks, weren't too bad. Tony, yours was doing pretty well and had a couple bad numbers that kind of kicked him out. And mine was Scotty, and it kind of fared and played decent, but Hutter just killed him again on a few of those. And once he can get that figured out, I think he'll continue to win a lot more. But congratulations to Xander Schauffele. It was fun to watch him dominate and play really well in the back nine. We're recording this Monday after the Open. So yesterday played exceptionally well. I think the course held up great as well too during the week. We can talk a little more about the conditions on Saturday, but it was not a joke around there. And it was just fun kind of seeing professional golfers not go 20 and 30 under par in a tournament. And winner was at 9, and just fun to see them go around Troon. Both played it, DJ and just fun to watch. And it was just a great tournament.
Yeah, it really was. It was a great week. It was funny you mentioned you lead off with Tony. I was going to say that, after I think it was day one, he was even par. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I texted you and was like, look, Tony's like, he's not in it, but he's not, he's not out of it. He was, and
Yep.
he might have even been ahead of Scotty, or maybe he was, I don't remember exactly.
Yep.
And then by the time I tuned in on Friday, he'd gone out in like 45 or something on the front nine. So, oh well, win some, you lose some. But yeah, it was just a great several days. Troon looked great as from a, like you said, like how it held up, literally 20 under, I think, won last time. So to see it come back here, 8 years later and have a completely different, turnout or outcome, if you will, was really cool to see. And yeah, Xander just went out and won it, right? You shoot 65, I think it was, on a Sunday, on the Open with no bogeys on the card. You deserve to win if you're at
Yep.
all close going into it. But yeah, what did you think of the postage stamp, and how, in the railway, and just the stuff that you end up talking about a lot in general? What did you think?
Yeah, so I thought the guys would make it a little bit easier. You look at 17 at Sawgrass, and not a good comparison, but kind of the same. Like, hey, you look at it, it's just a wedge, but conditions are a little bit tougher. And some guys, they struggled. They hit in bunkers, and there was some big numbers out there. I think a couple of guys made some 6s and 7s, and I think I saw an 8 on there as well, which is fun. But it's good watching. And I think I've got YouTube TV myself, and they had a thing on there that you could actually just watch essentially, I think 8 and 11 and a few other holes, but they were just watching and doing shots just on 8. So it's fun to watch. The grandstands was right behind there. I was thinking we may get a hole in one, but didn't happen on 8. But great to watch the postage stamp. And then 11 was the railway was good too. I think it may have been the first or second round. Patrick Cantlay just decided to hit while the train was going right by and whizzing by. It's really funny. Just didn't stop, and it was good watch. And a few guys hit it over the tracks a couple times too. So it just makes it more interesting from a viewer standpoint as well. But it was good. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, the you're right. So I'm pretty sure it was Joaquin Neiman made an 8 on the postage
Yeah.
stamp,
Yeah.
and he was in decent shape as well. So he fought
Hmm.
back. But you got a quintuple bogey on the card, on one hole, and it's the shortest hole in Open Championship golf. It's pretty wild. And then yeah, the railway is just tough as nails, from all the way back there, But I thought it was a great example of links golf and
Yeah.
the weather and the conditions and the coin toss that it is. We joke that sometimes we have groups that come back, and if they have only encountered nothing but sunshine their whole trip, they almost feel like a little bit like they missed out on part of
Yeah.
the experience. And Saturday they definitely got the experience at Royal Troon. I don't know that I agree with some of the complaining that was going on about tee
Yeah.
placement by one golfer in particular, But everybody in those last few groups played the same course and hit driver into the same par four and whatever it might have been. So that's just links golf. And if anybody should know that, it's a guy that's won it in the past. Not to name any names, but we all know who I'm talking about. But it was just a great tournament. And, kudos big time to our friends at Royal Troon and the Marine Troon and just the town of Troon in general. It is no small undertaking to, have 250,000 people roll into your town of 15 or 20,000 people. So everyone just did a great job. Somehow they managed to pull it off year after year. And we're moving on to Royal Portrush next year in 2025. But shifting back to today's episode, today we have actually just recently passed the halfway point for the 2024 golf travel season. And every year in our post-expedition surveys, we ask the question, what advice would you give to future H&B travelers? And this question provides so much insight year after year. We get just a wealth of information rolls in from this. Maybe the group pops into a brand new restaurant that opened within the last couple of weeks, or maybe their driver host pulled off into a small town that's way off the beaten path, and they had an awesome experience at a pub that maybe we were previously unfamiliar with. We make a list of all of these things throughout the season, and then in the off season, we'll go check them out. And more often than not, we discover that, yeah, this place belongs on our recommendations list. And so we just make so many great discoveries, thanks in part to this question. It also provides a little bit of backup to the things that we try to drive home with folks before they depart. There's a reason why Yelp and TripAdvisor are still so prevalent today. People want to hear from those who have gone before them. And no matter how much we may try to drive something home, it just doesn't quite sink in the same than when it comes from a peer who has recently taken a trip. So we thought it would be fun to pull some of these from our first half of the season. These are a few that felt particularly important. Connor, why don't you lead us off with tip number one?
Absolutely. And the first tip of the episode comes courtesy of a member from Bull Valley Golf Club. And the tip was bring an extra bag or leave extra space for all the items you will buy while there. And we get this all the time. And kind of one of the big answers to a lot of our surveys is pack less. I mean, I think 1 in every 5 surveys has something in regards to that. I'm not even joking. And it really comes down to, I mean, if you're going over and you're playing, just say 5 to 10 rounds of golf, depending on the length of your trip and where you're playing and such. I mean, you're going to buy merchandise in the shops. You're not gonna go empty-handed. I can promise you that. So a lot of times you can use some of that merchandise that you bought, for some of the rounds over there. More and more times I've gone over, if I'm playing 5 rounds of golf, I'll pack 3 days worth of outerwear stuff and just know for a fact I'm gonna buy something. It's funny, a lot of the pictures from our members that come over, if they, their first round of golf, say it's at Kingsbarns, and their third or fourth rounds at the old course, they're repping Kingsbarns or one of the merchandise from the other round. So overall, just pack less, and it comes from that as well. And a lot of times you can also just rewear clothes in general. Some people, when they're packing, they're putting together, what they may lounge around in the mornings. They're going to put their golf clothing, and then they're also going to have an outfit for dinner or just, evening activities as well. And a lot of times, I mean, you can shower and such, but a lot of times, a lot of those clothes from, a pullover or a sweater or jumper, if you will, you can use that just for dinner as well. So I would say the other big thing is just using a lot of those clothes for other outfits throughout the week, and that'll help with your overpacking issues from that. I mean, we all overpack, but I mean, again, a lot of our groups, will have that issue throughout their trip. Also, the other thing, like you said, bring an extra bag, and I've had a couple groups, ask about this as well. I have one, and I bought it off Amazon. It's very, very inexpensive, but it's like a little duffel bag, and it actually zips up to, I mean, like a small piece of paper size. But some groups can use that for, like, example, if you're playing Muirfield and you're enjoying afternoon lunch. You have all these clothes are coming in, you're going to walk in with golf clothes, but you have, coat and tie, shoes, et cetera, maybe even another set of clothes to shower into for your afternoon golf there. So you have some other things, and just bringing a small duffel bag you can bring into Muirfield or just some other places, helps. And also just in case, because that it goes into a small pouch, essentially that duffel. If you do have overpacking issues and you do buy a lot of merchandise, you can use that to maybe check another bag or have another carry-on coming back home post expedition as well. So just kind of elaborating on that, but it's a great tip from members from Bull Valley Golf Club.
Yeah, thanks for that tip for the folks from Bull Valley up near Chicago. I actually I did the math. You said 1 in 5 mentions overpacking, and I did the math on this. And out of the scores and scores of answers that we've received so far, 20% have mentioned packing in some form. Either I had too many clothes, or whatever. Not a single one said they didn't have enough clothes. And I can't recall one time in 11 or 12 years having ever heard, I wish I took more clothes. No, never happens. So if you think you need it, you probably don't. My next tip comes from a couple members from Stonewall Links near Philadelphia, and the tip is play a mix of courses. We had the most fun playing some of the smaller, less recognized courses. Crail Balcomie and a spur-of-the-moment stop at London Links were highlights of our trip. Cannot tell you how often we hear this. You go overseas, of course, to play the old course in Muirfield and Royal County Down and Portrush and Dornoch and wherever else you might want to go. But so often it is that smaller, maybe unknown course that ends up making the biggest, most lasting impression. And I think that a lot of that goes back to expectations. You show up to Muirfield with expectations. You show up to the old course with expectations. You've dreamed about this round for however long, and you've built it up in your mind, and you're expecting an out of this world experience. And yes, you're going to get it most of the time, but you don't show up to Kilspindie down the street with those same expectations. You're coming just to knock the cobwebs off of your jet lag. And so it's a whole lot easier to be blown away by these places. And also it comes down to as well to the hospitality. I mean, the hospitality is great across the board, but those smaller clubs, they are so grateful that you've taken the time, because they are so used to watching those coaches drive right by. And so, for you to pull in and take the time and invest it with them, they're just incredibly grateful. And all of that adds up to your overall experience. I think another example comes from a member of Salt Lake City Country Club, and he just says, play Ely. And I think that wraps it up in 2 words. I mean, just go play Ely. And he's absolutely spot on. But Connor, lead us into our next one. I know you're also a big fan of those off the path places.
Yeah, certainly am. And that expedition from Salt Lake City Country Club, that was actually my group. And I mean, they played North Berwick, Muirfield, Old Course, Carnoustie, Kingsbarns. And not only in that survey, but there was also a separate email that was sent. And they could have talked about all the great, bucket list courses, but one of their most special experiences was playing Ely. I think actually it was an afternoon round after Kingsbarns, and they just raved about it. And it just goes back to just playing those kind of lesser recognized courses, if you will, and the experience is just amazing there. So yeah, it's a great tip. But number 3, as we mentioned, comes from a member from Western Hills Country Club. Actually, that club is here in town in Cincinnati, which is great. And the tip is get in shape before you go. There's so much truth to that. Maybe incorporate 2 off days into your itinerary between driving and golfing. I didn't feel like we had much time to enjoy the local areas. And it's a great tip there. Get in shape before you go. I mean, you can look at the itinerary and see all the golf you're going to play, but tell yourself, I mean, when's the last time I have walked 5, 7, 8 or so rounds of golf, all in a row? And a lot of times that answer is years ago. We'll have groups. I mean, they're like, hey, what do we do? And I'm like, hey, get on a treadmill or just start walking a lot more. Say no to the golf cart. If you're going out with a buddy, just have him take the cart and you walk. I've said it before. People laugh when I say this. I actually had a group that I was working with a little bit ago, and they're like, oh, it's all good. But the turf is a lot harder there, and it has a lot of stress on your feet too. So just continue walking. I would say condition yourself a few months prior to departure, and you'll be fine. And then, incorporate a few days off on your itinerary. A lot of times groups say, hey, yeah, we want for the golf and that's all good, but we just wish we had a day or two, off to sit in St. Andrews and not play golf and go to the pubs and see the area, maybe do a walking tour or hang out in Edinburgh, or walk around, or do a tour of the Highlands or stuff like that. Obviously, you're going for the golf, but there's so much to see more outside of that, outside of just the survey. But a lot of things that we get in a lot of surveys as well is just take more time off, and that allows you to see kind of the local areas. And really comes down to a lot of those surveys we get, we've never really seen one that says we wish we would have played more golf. It's always we wish we would have played less. Happens all the time. And I don't know about the 20% on this one, but it's probably sure close, Deej.
It is a fair number. You're right. I mean, again, in all of the years here, I've never seen someone say, gosh, I wish we had another extra round or two of golf. And the thing is, a lot of times you can still add golf if you really want to. It can oftentimes be done. So, don't bog down your itinerary to start with like etched in stone golf that you've already prepaid for or whatever. If you're feeling up for it and you've just had an amazing day and you want to keep on going, a lot of times it can work out for you in that regard. My next one comes from the recent expedition from Cape Cod National Golf Club. And the tip, and it kind of ties into what Connor was just talking about in a way, stick to 18 holes a day so that you can fully enjoy the experience of each course, whether that's playing the course, shopping in the pro shop, having a bite or a pint after the round. Also, try to have a mix of morning and afternoon tee times so every day is not an early start, especially if you have a late night crew. And finally, making dinner reservations in advance was a super stress reducer, as we did not have to have a group debate over the time and location of dinner each night. So he's got 3 in 1 here. And, obviously, number one goes back to what Connor was just saying. If you pull up to whatever course, get off the coach, play, and get right back on the coach and leave, you have missed so much of the experience. These courses, the clubhouses and so forth are miniature museums in so many cases. Take some extra time, go look at the memorabilia, talk to the members, have a pint, have a bite to eat, hit the pro shop, of course, we talked about earlier, but try to savor it. And, that's hard to do if you have chocked it full of wall-to-wall golf. But that morning and afternoon tee times tip, that is a great one, especially if you do have that 36-hole day. Well, maybe try to play a touch later the next day if you can, so that everybody can have a leisurely morning. But, as we have talked about a couple times in the past, a lot of times you don't have a whole lot of choice as far as that goes. Visitor times are sandwiched in, certain windows of the day. So sometimes it's just a matter of here's what time you can play, whether you want to or not. But then the last one is probably the biggest with regards to dinner reservations. Restaurants overseas, most of them are considerably smaller than we are used to here. And you are not the only group of golfers in St. Andrews or whatever town it might be. You do not want to walk off the golf course at 7 o'clock at night and have to have that debate that he mentions of where do you want to eat? Like, that's the last thing you want to be doing. You don't necessarily need to plan a dinner every single night, but at least have, maybe a few on the books so that you can relieve yourself that stress some of the nights, especially if you've got a late tee time. Everybody's going to walk off the course hungry. You don't want to be scrambling. And if you've got a group of, I'm going to say a group bigger than 4, these restaurants, they're only, in many cases, they're only going to have maybe 1 or 2 tables tops that can accommodate an 8 top and certainly a 12 or a 16. And so you're going to potentially be out of luck if you haven't planned that in advance. So if you're traveling with H&B, take this advice. Get with the H&B concierge so that we can make those dinner reservations for whatever nights that you want. But Connor, what is your next one up on the list?
Sure. Tip number 5, it is courtesy of members from Philadelphia Cricket Club. It's my group as well, and a pleasure to work with them. And the tip was, we did 2 days in London, and they watched some Premier League games as an add-on prior to the golf portion, and that was a great way to acclimate to the time zone change when we were ready to play golf on the 3rd day. No matter how many times you've traveled overseas, jet lag can get us all. And even just this tip or doing something in advance, prior, that really just kind of helps get you acclimated to the time zone. You can really focus on that golf. I mean, a lot of times, I mean, some of our expeditions, you land in country and then you have arrival day golf, and yeah, you can do it. But you may not play the best. You may be pretty sleepy throughout the round. May just not be the great experience. And it is what it is. Trying to get as much golf as you can in, and a certain amount of timing. But taking this tip, not only just Premier League games in London or just in England or what have you, but doing something a little bit different, and maybe just hanging out for a few days. I had a group that was going over. We originally scheduled arrival day golf, but they're like, you know what? We want to spend 2 days in Dublin, kind of acclimate ourselves, have a few pints, get used to, kind of the country, and then go on from there. And that's what they did. So that's just one tip off of another, but it's a great tip. And, even like I said, even doing a post trip, hanging out for a little bit of a few days, maybe just an extra night after the golf, decompress before heading home, and go from there. So great tip from our members from Philadelphia Cricket Club.
Yeah, that is a good one. And what a fun way to start a trip, landing and going to some Premier League games. I'm sure that they probably had a particular team that they were there to support. But yeah, you kind of called it. I mean, you don't necessarily have to land and do nothing. You can land and take a walking tour, which a lot of our groups will do, especially if you're in St. Andrews or Edinburgh, what have you. It's a great way to just kind of get the blood moving and see some sights in the meantime. And especially if you do have a golf heavy itinerary, where you're playing every day, and maybe you skipped that day off and didn't pay attention to that advice. Well, that might be your one and only chance to do some really good sightseeing. So great tip there. My last one comes from a member from Gulf Mills Golf Club. I believe that's also near Philadelphia.
Yeah, a lot of Philly clubs.
Yeah, we've got a lot of Philly is in the house today. But this tip was plan flights in advance. A few of our guys had issues with both timing and getting seats when they booked closer to the trip dates. Look, we have all read the articles about the boom in international travel. Everything is at capacity. There are only so many flights. There are only so many seats on those flights. Don't wait on securing your flight. It's a long way over. You don't want to be stuck in 42E. Once your trip is confirmed, go ahead and line up your flight. The little bit of savings that you might have picked up by waiting or trying to scout the airfare or whatever, it's not going to be worth it in the end. The airlines, like we just said, they're at capacity. If you've flown internationally lately or even domestically, there are not open seats to be had. Make sure that you're not scrambling at the last minute. It's just, obviously you've planned this great trip. You do have to get there though. none of it can happen if you're scrambling on your flight. And that is a great tip. Plan your flights early, just like everything else on the trip. But Connor, I think we've covered some good terrain here, some awesome advice from our members. Anything you want to add on there before we wrap it up?
I don't think so, Deej. I think we hit them all, and this was a fun episode to do. And looking forward. I mean, we're right at the halfway point essentially throughout the travel season. So we'll have some more tips. We'll probably, I don't know if we'll do another episode or maybe just a few more like this, the beginning of an episode in the future once our travel season's complete in October. But this is a fun one, and looking forward to the next one in a few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's a good point. We will have a whole lot more answers to this survey question. So if you're traveling with H&B, be sure to drop it in. Drop your advice into that survey so that we can maybe share it in a future episode. Or if you're just listening, send us your advice. If that's something that we didn't cover, something that you may have discovered, don't hesitate. We would love to include you in the show as well. But we will link to a few additional guides, as always, in the show notes. If you've got any questions about golf travel across the pond, send us a DM on social media or an email, golf@haversham.com. But otherwise, thanks as always for tuning in. We'll be back again soon with another episode. But until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.